What's up, Samurai? We are back again for some more Wayfinder, and this is a bit of an interesting one because I ended up getting access to this game a couple days before its release. That's actually when I'm recording this video, so excuse any bugs and issues you might see because I'm not using the current build of the game. Now, I ended up asking you guys in my community to hit me up with some common questions, and I wanted to answer those in today's video. So first, Dank Val asked, did they iron out any problems we noticed during the open beta? Because him and I both ended up actually playing the open beta, and obviously we couldn't really talk about it. Generally speaking though, I haven't noticed too many fixes just because of the fact that I, again, am actually on the same active version that we were playing during the beta. So I'm assuming that after the game has released and I can start publishing these videos, we've gone to the day one patch and more than likely it's rectified a lot of the issues, because currently on this build, I've been crashing constantly and dealing with a lot of issues. So hopefully that's actually been rectified by now. Darren asks, how many dollars do I need to spend to play the game? It's up to you, but the very minimum is going to end up being 20 bucks, which goes right into our next questions from Spakel asking, is it free to play? So yesn't is the answer that I would give, because the game is heavily advertised as being free to play, but is not going to actually be free to play until sometime next year. We don't know when, but at the bare minimum, it's going to be 6 months. Currently, the only way of actively being able to play this game is you have to buy one of the Founders Packs. Do you need to pay monthly until it becomes free to play? If it becomes free to play, that is. No, there's no monthly subscription or anything to this game. Thank God there's not any games that can really sustain monthly subscription anymore. It's just kind of the old fossil games. So you basically just buy early access to the game for, let's say, a minimum of the $20 pack, and then you have access to the entire game. Obviously, there is going to end up being certain features that are locked behind the paywall, or more specifically, the paywall will give you faster progression. So for example, you can actively go out of your way to search and gather all these different materials to craft all of your weapons, or you could just spend money and unlock the weapon outright. Same with the classes. So we got a couple questions here from Spooky saying, what does the current game loop look like? So to answer your question, there's a couple different things that you can do. You can go out into the open world areas and explore and fight things with large groups of people, or more specifically, you can go into the instanced dungeons over and over again, and basically you'll be able to grind specific resources out of those dungeons by repeating them over and over again, or you can actively activate a imbuement, which will change the element of that dungeon, which will change the items that are dropped from the enemies. It's very, very Warframe in the sense that you'll repeat dungeons over and over to get very specific resources so that you can actively gather and collect all of the different, classes and weapons and so on and so forth. His next question is, what is Wayfinder most like? Which we kind of answered that. I'd say that the closest resemblance is Warframe. So I had to actually go back to town so I could answer this question, because he's wondering how complex is the crafting in the game? Crafting overview or an in-depth guide or whatever. I don't know if I necessarily need to do an in-depth guide on the crafting, but more than likely I will eventually. Basically, you can end up buying the starting weapon of each of the characters. I think that you can get these regardless of if you have the character unlocked, but the weapon crafting itself is, I'm not gonna say it's complicated, it's just convoluted, because you can see that the Grim Harvest requires the harvest, form, spirit, essence, and shell. So you can craft the shell, you can craft the form, you can craft the spirit, but in order to get the essence, that, as far as I know, is an item that you're going to actively have to find, right? Maybe found by defeating the Storm Twins. So you would fight the Storm Twins over and over to get that active last piece of equipment. But otherwise, in order to craft the rest of the components for the weapon, you can see that it's like found in lost zones when any flora mutator is active, and so on and so forth. Of course, there is always going to end up being the option of opening up the cash shop so that you can end up either just buying the characters or buying the weapons. Unfortunately, I can't tell you the price of any of the weapons or characters. Last questions from Spooky saying, what do you wish you knew when you started? Are there any tips? Frankly speaking, no. The game is very straightforward, with basically the only two active styles of play being going into dungeons or going out into the open world and stuff. And I mean, for the most part, it's very intuitive in that regard. It's just when it comes to the crafting stuff, it can be a little bit daunting. I don't have access to player housing, And as far as I know, when you get into the player housing, you can put down like trophies and stuff that will give you active buffs while you're out roaming the open world and stuff and doing dungeons. So you definitely want to get involved with the housing, whether you like it or not. Hendy says, how much variation in the weapons? How is the system? And do you have literally everything in the game? So there is a couple things that I am currently missing on this account, namely the battle pass I have on this account, but I'm not I don't have it like fully maxed out, despite the fact that I do actually have all of the characters, including Venom-S, which is unlocked through the battle pass. But anyways, in terms of your question about the weapons, I'm going to have a lot of videos that are going to talk about the differences between all of the weapons and stuff like that. I might have already started posting those. We'll see what happens. But honestly, dude, I'm not trying to just oversell it. The combat in this game is what sells me on it. Obviously, I really like the artistic design of the game and find that it to be very, very graphically appealing. It kind of feels like modern Warcraft. But the weapons themselves are very, very fluent and fun because essentially the combat is kind of like dodging with iframes with all of the weapons, but then you've got certain weapons that block, certain weapons that are more offensive. You've literally got guns that are similar to Gears of War where you've got an active reload, and I'm sure that there's going to end up being a weapon archetype that you will enjoy if you give it a shot. So Ghost Hunter says, you had all of the classes. How many are there? And if you level up one, can you switch class to start leveling another, or do you need to make a whole new character? So it is all account bound, so you don't gotta worry about that. At the moment, there is going to end up being this many characters. You can see there's a little bit of visual glitches here, but Silo is kind of the grenade launcher fire guy. There's Kairos, and then Heroic Kairos is basically a stronger version of him. Think of a primed version of a character from Warframe, where he's literally the same character, just he looks slightly different and has slightly more stats. Venom-S is the newest character, quote unquote, that is currently active in the battle pass, and she feels really good because she's kind of a poison healer. Wingrave is also a self-sustained tank healer, and in my opinion is the coolest looking character currently. Nis is the dual dagger super fast rogue character with a lot of Naruto dashing and running and stuff, and then Senja is the big barbarian chick. But to answer your question, all of their levels are going to be independent. So you can see that in this press account that they gave me, all of the characters are level 30. But if we go over to the affinity, you'll see that there are all of these different stats that I've leveled up on the character, but then there's also all of these different weapon stats I've leveled up on the character. So if I swap over to, let's swap over to Senja, for example, right? If I end up grabbing the same sword, you can see that the sword is still retaining its level, but then Senja herself doesn't have any of her level points spent. So there's going to be these little fire icons right here. These are going to basically be the primary currency that's used for leveling up. And then there's all of these other orbs. But we can always end up respeccing our characters as well, because as you saw with Wingrave, we actually don't have enough stats to max him out, despite the fact that he is currently max level. So you kind of just pick and choose based on the situation and based how you want to build the character. However, builds are very simple right now. If we respec, you'll see that we will only get our aspect points back. So we don't get any of the money and we don't get any of these orbs back. Now, if you respec a weapon, which I don't know why you would ever want to do that, apparently it doesn't give us anything back. It just like resets the weapon to level 1, and I don't know why you would ever do that. And of course, the last question, again from Spooky, saying, is it worth buying the Founders Pack to gain access, or should we just wait until free to play? I think $20 Founder Pack is a steal for the amount of content that you get out of this game. It's a fun game. I really can't stress enough how much I enjoy the combat. It's very skill based. Well, also obviously you have to have good stats, but one of my proud moments when this game really clicked for me was when I was playing the beta. I ended up fighting a boss that I was way too under leveled for, but because of dodging having iframes and the heavy televised attacks of the boss, I was able to kill it just based on skill alone. I died a lot, but still, that was the moment when it just clicked with me, where I was like, this is a good game, and I really enjoy the active combat of it. So Spooky actually added one last question, even though I already wrapped up for this video and had everything recorded, mentioning that if I bought the pack that gives me a Wayfinder token, which characters should I get with it? Now, the interesting thing is those tokens don't have to be spent immediately. The devs have reiterated many, many times that you can just save those tokens and wait for another character further down the line. I don't know why you would ever want to do that, but if we end up looking at the base characters that are in the game right now, my feedback is if your character doesn't have some form of self-sustaining, generally speaking, they end up being really squishy. I found that Wingrave is kind of the most successful default character that I ended up using, but granted, a lot of my experience with this press account and even during the beta was playing the game solo, so I had to have a character with high survivability. But Venomous, which is the character out of the battle pass, she seems to be the best because she's got higher damage than Wingrave, but also has a lot of healing abilities as well. So for my money, I would say save your token for a character further down the line. I don't know at this moment in time whether or not you have to use the token to get a default starting character, or if at the beginning of the game you're just going to be able to choose a character, in which case I will make a proper guide explaining my thoughts towards that. Either way, that's all the questions that I have from you guys for today. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed.